Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm your host, Dustin Olson. Thank you so much for joining us for this interview prep crash course. We really do appreciate having folks like you from across the internet joining us for these conversations as we seek to empower conservatives across our great nation to be the informed citizens, the most effective citizens that they can be, and then also to be powerful political leaders, people who really they see something that's needed in their community, and they step up and they make the difference. They see something that's needed in their state and they step up and they make the difference. And people who, for our country, they step up, they show up, and they are the leaders that we need to be able to ultimately reignite American patriotism. That's why we're here. And really do want to encourage you to be a part of this program. So if you'd like to be a part of the movement to reignite American patriotism, I request that you go and you like and you love or you wow our episodes on whatever platform that you're on, or that you follow, subscribe, or get notifications to be able to get the program every single day. We do it weekdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Or the way that you can really make a difference is to share the program and make sure that people across this great country get to see it, because who knows what conservative that you might inspire to step up, to show up, to speak up, to be that political leader for their community. So what I really request that you do is to join ShareForce. So join ShareForce, make a difference, reignite American patriotism. That's the way to do it. And it's as simple as going right down. There's a share button wherever you're at, and you can either retweet, share, whatever the platform that you're on right now. You can make sure that more people see this program and that we are able to really lift up our movement to reignite American patriotism. And another way you can do that is you can also go to our website at politicaltradesecrets.com, and you can sign up to be a Political Trade Secrets Insider to get exclusive stuff. You can also watch the program there, but please do go to politicaltradesecrets.com and sign up to be a part of that, and to also just join us for the conversation today. But here we come to the most important part of the program, the part that I know that you've all been waiting for, the part where we scour this country for the greatest political leader there ever has been, the Buckeyes best, the America's sweetheart, your friend and mine, our co-host, Sean Bartley. Sean, how the heck are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Good morning to you. Good morning to everyone out there. Really appreciate the kind intro, and appreciate that every day.
Yes.
So that's really great. And look, I'm looking forward not just to coming on and joining everyone today, but really a great show. I mean, we are going to be talking about something that I think is not just good for politics, but really for life. Is if you've got 20 minutes to do something that, we're talking about 20 minutes to prepare for a media interview, but this really could be 20 minutes for anything that you might deem important. You get to go ahead and do a little prep and get your mind in the right spot on how to really be able to deliver what it is you want to communicate with folks. And so that's really what we're gonna be talking about today.
Yeah, and this is ultimately how you get your message out there, how you share your vision with a wide swath of the public. And for Republicans, I think they get a little bit scared because they've heard a lot of the fake news, and they have heard a lot of the Republicans who decry it, and I don't blame them for decrying it. But at the end of the day, you can break through. You know, Donald Trump was one of those people who was willing to step up, to show up and speak up, and to get the attention that he needed for his campaign. And, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. He was able to generate $2 billion ultimately in value from having been willing to earn that media. And so that's really what we're going to be talking about today, is the ability to do just that. And people can join the conversation. They can, wherever you're at. We're on 11 different platforms across the internet, whether you're Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're at, you can watch the program. And please do so. And you can you can love it, you can share it, you can follow, subscribe wherever you're at. But what you can do right this moment to be a part of this conversation is you can post in the comments a question, a comment, join the conversation. I see we already have people who are commenting. JT is super psyched about the show. Thank you very much. Pat Melton says, my favorite part of the day. Well, thank you very much. And it's always it's a joy to have you stop in and have a conversation with us, Pat. We do appreciate it. And also Alex, already with a question, and really do appreciate it. This is an example of a candidate or a future candidate who really is getting the most value possible out of our shows. We give a lot of value every single day. And she says, absolutely excellent topic today. Those of us who are preparing to run or currently running for office should be prepared for interviews no matter the size of the race. That's absolutely true. Mm-hmm. I highly recommend fellow candidates to attend the Leadership Institute media training and attend leadership.
Training workshops. They could cut out with just one word left.
That's right. Those are great, and we really do appreciate it. And we will be bringing all of that into the show today. So anywhere you're at, please do post a question or comment, and we will monitor those and bring them. And I see Will over on YouTube. Always good to catch these live, and thank you, Will, for joining us. We do appreciate it, and we really do thank you all for being here with us each and every day as we seek to discover what it is to be a political leader, how citizens of this great country can really make a difference. And I see people are already sharing the program as well, which really does make a difference. Say something about that, Sean. It's pretty remarkable. Yesterday, I think, how many did we have?
Well, it was over 100 shares yesterday. I think it might even gotten up to 110. What we really appreciate is that people are seeing some value in this and really sharing it with others. Because let's say that you're seeing this and you go, well, hey, I'm not going to run for office, or I might not run for office. So, but you probably know someone who is at least thinking about it. And so sharing it to them. And then there is something in here wherever you are in being a political leader. There is something for everyone here. And you'll know, even if you aren't thinking about running for office, sometimes you can be at events and be asked, hey, what's your thought on this? Mm-hmm. By a reporter. And there are some things that you're going to be able to do just from today's show to be able to go, oh, yeah, that's something that's going to make a difference. So something you're going to pick up from this, something that your network's going to pick up from this. So it's really good. And so sharing that is really important. And hey, if you are thinking about sharing information with your constituents or your voters, if you are running for office, there is one great tactic to do that: texting. And 10-cent texting is the best in getting your image, gift, short video out there to your voters, the people who need to hear from you most. Look, 82% of people open every text message they get. Now, the question is it memorable, or is it something that they go, oh, this was not worth my time? And
we don't want to spam them.
Yeah, exactly. So that is where using really the tools that 10-cent texting has available for you, and the book that they wrote on this, literally wrote the book on how to deliver effective text. And it's the 8 pro tips to political texting right there on their website. Go download that and reach out to them. They'd love to have a conversation with you about what makes the difference in political texting.
We were doing a text campaign yesterday, and it was really cool having a conversation with someone in Wisconsin, back and forth about the vaccine and different things, and who would have thought you send out a mass text, but then you get to have individual conversations with people over
Yeah.
the text chain, and we get to have that. We're consultants. We get to have those conversations with real people and be informed by it. I really did appreciate that, and that's something that any campaign, the campaign manager, the consultant, the candidate themselves, depending on the race, might want to actually interact with the people that you send out your message to and actually get real feedback from real people.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it really is one of the things that really comes from that. So make sure that you do get connected with your voters, your constituents, and make the difference for them. And then, hey, we've got some great episodes coming up, Dustin.
That's right.
Tomorrow, Professor Veroli.
Yes. Maurizio. And I'm not going to roll my R's on that. I don't want to sound like I'm doing an impression of an Italian person.
Yeah.
But Maurizio Veroli is going to be on from Princeton. He's an expert, one of the top experts in the world on Machiavelli. He wrote a book called Redeeming Machiavelli. Machiavelli gets a bad rap. And, he's in a different time, different place, but he really was a political advisor, much like myself and Sean back in his day. And he sought to inform the princes in his book, Il Principio. The prince, he really wanted to give advice. And Maurizio Veroli has really kind of pulled back the curtain on really what was going on there. And really that, Machiavelli was a big proponent of the Republic.
Mhm.
And he has this book called How to Choose a Leader, Machiavelli's Advice to Citizens and Citizens of Republics as to how to choose their leaders. And he has a lot of really great advice. By the way, there's a lot of great resources on Machiavelli. I highly recommend people, brush off their, old copy from high school or college and take a look at it. It's actually a pretty straightforward read, but this is amazing. This is chapter 1 of the book. Citizens ought to, quote, keep their hands on the republic and, quote, choose the lesser evil. Well, that just sounds like an American election any given year, honestly. And good advice. That's ultimately what you do. Another chapter. And these are all based on quotes from Machiavelli directly. Judge by the hands, not by the eyes.
Yeah.
So he'll go into a little bit more of this and explain why he took on being really an apologist for Machiavelli when that's probably not the most popular thing to do. I think we have that experience. We're definitely big fans of President Trump, and I feel like that's kind of the same task sometimes. But he sees the genius that Machiavelli had and the advice that people can glean from him. I think people are going to really love the episode. I can't wait. I can't wait to find out what he thinks. We also have Michael Rechtenwald next Tuesday, I believe,
Yes.
Who's going to be joining the show. Google Archipelago, the Digital Gulag, and the Simulation of Freedom. And we're going to be talking with him about that. He also wrote A Springtime for Snowflakes. And he just has a really interesting ideas about kind of where corporate activism is going. That's something we've seen a lot this week. I mean, Sean, what are you just like beside yourself watching all these companies fall over themselves, trying to be so woke?
So here's the real concern, and I think it's probably one that I certainly get from others out there, is that you either become numb to it, like, oh yeah, another corporation, they're woke. Mm-hmm. Or you start in this, okay, well then I'm going to be making my decisions based on their wokeness, and I want to be, so then it really creates this tit for tat situation where you're looking at like, well, who can I patronize now with my dollars, and and be aligned with people that either don't want to get into the fray of this stuff and say, you know what, that's not. We're here to, what if a shoe company was just there to make shoes?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be, there's a novel concept. And what if their focus was on making the shoes more comfortable and better looking and not, oh, hey, today we need to make a political statement about whatever might be going on that they don't have a clue about. I mean, that's the other thing that really, if really getting down to it, that's probably the thing that gets me the most.
They're so uninformed.
Yeah.
They're uninformed. They have this basic, almost bumper sticker knowledge of political issues. They sound like idiots. When professional baseball got into the whole you need an ID, having an ID to vote is racist. And immediately we find out that you have to have an ID to get your tickets a will call. You have to have an ID to get a drink at the concession stand, and on and on and on. They just look like fools, and they look
Yeah.
like they haven't thought through basic things that we're going to talk about today as we talk
Yes.
about interview prep. A 20-minute crash course. They should have waited to watch this episode, because the truth is, had they done a 20-minute crash course on interview prep, they probably would have been like, you know what? They would have answered one of the questions is, should we do this in the first place? They would have found out, heck no, we should not do this in the first place. That's the first thing. But I think they have a lot of these stupid Democrat, like Obama, Kamala Harris, all these communications people from these campaigns it's like a revolving door. And at the White House now, it's a revolving door between these big tech companies and these other corporate communications departments. These people are back and forth. There's no big Republicans in these companies. And they've basically taken it over. Anyway, Michael Rechtenwald is going to have some thoughts on that. He has some thoughts specifically on how that kind of corporate culture has come about, and why it's not super surprising, and it's something we should expect that in these supranational entities that they've really taken over.
So it's an episode I'm looking forward to, and I'm scared to death of, all in one,
Yes.
all in one foul swoop there. So, but I think it's gonna be illuminating for sure. And I think there's going to be some helpful things come out of it on what you can do going forward. So
Yeah, one of the things I'm really interested in finding out is his thoughts on specifically how algorithms and artificial intelligence are currently affecting politics and how they're going to affect politics going forward. That's something I got from the book, that it's definitely a part of that. And going back to Maurizio Veroli, we have a comment here. Roll the R's, Dustin, is the correct pronunciation. We love Maurizio. Thank you for these shows this week. I will ask him before we start the episode how he prefers to have me say that, and I will make sure that we do it correctly on the show. And then another question: what should we as candidates do right now to prepare for media interviews? Is there a way to practice techniques? That's excellent. And thank you everybody who's joining the conversation already. I see we have another comment. This is awesome. Thank you for your comments, your questions, for sharing, for liking, for loving, for wowing, whatever you're doing. We do appreciate it, no matter what. And one of the ways that you can be a part of the conversation, this has been great. I've gotten a number of messages that have really informed this show that we're doing right now. People text us. They text me directly at 202-918-3345. Again, that's 202-918-3345. You text me, you get a text back, you have this link, you opt in. But once you opt in, you're getting text directly from me or text directly from Sean. And we're able to have a one-on-one conversation with you. Or when we get on the show, we send out the link. Sean did that a moment ago, and you get all the most up-to-date stuff. We always send out resources after the program by text. So, and it's not obtrusive. You just get it directly to the source, and then you can ask questions and you can provide input. We really do use a lot of the input from the texting community during this program. So again, text me at 202-918-3345. It's another way we get questions for the show. So please do send those to us. We really, really do appreciate it. And keep commenting and questioning as we go through the program. So, Sean, I am excited about this episode. And we've talked to a number of people over the last week as we're preparing for this, and they were excited about this episode as well.
Yeah, well, it's something that people don't generally think about, but it's really, what do you do when you only have 20 minutes to prepare for a media interview? Mm-hmm. And one thing that we like to say is, the truth is, almost all interviews are basically 20 minutes to prepare situations.
Even for that thing that you've been planning for forever, that policy announcement or whatever, or the announcing your campaign, you're likely going to find out it's going to be 20 minutes until the interview. Or you have 3 hours. We're it's oftentimes you might have 3 hours. That's like if you have a lot of time. And if you have 3 hours, you still are probably only going to have 20 minutes to prepare for the
Well,
interview because you have a bunch of other stuff you got to do.
well, exactly. And if you're spending 3 hours on the prep prior, then there's other stuff going on here
Mm-hmm.
that you really need to address, because you don't have time really for more than 20 minutes to prepare. And even if you know it's on the calendar, you want to make sure this 20 minutes is still done.
Yeah.
Now, some of it might happen earlier and some of it might happen later, but really, it's what takes 20 minutes. What we're going to talk about here is critical to look at, and so you really just want to be focused on that, because that'll make a huge difference for you. And there's some things you can do so that the 20 minutes seems less daunting.
And the truth is, these are it's 20 minutes before every interview. If you're going to do an interview, maybe you're going to have a host of interviews back to back. Okay, well then you do the prep before you go into all the interviews. You might do a little bit of prep between them, but ultimately you want to give yourself at least 20 minutes before the interview to do prep regardless. But the very common situation is, hey, I'm so and so reporter for such and such news, local affiliate news, ABC, NBC, CBS, local affiliate TV station, and I'm out. We're getting people talking about the new tax proposal, and I'm kind of in your neighborhood. I've got a cameraman. We could be there in about 20 minutes to 30 minutes. Would you be able to do a stand-up interview? That's a very common situation. And of course, you can go and do 100 print interviews. You can do all these different things, and you'll never have as many eyeballs see you as when you have a televised interview like that. So what do? They're on their way, to get prepared for it. So that's something that is a very likely scenario. You can also, once you get practice at this, you might get down to like 5 minutes to do a lot of this, but it's going to be pretty quick. So the a couple of the things that we're going to be talking about is, the Boy Scout motto is one of the big ideas. Always be prepared. The acid test. Should I do this at all? And then ultimately the big thing that's unique to us, which is the context creation and creating the filter that this whole interview is going to go through. And if you can do that, then it really will set you up to be successful. So let's go into the Boy Scout motto. And something else we say is dig your well before you're thirsty. The best advice is to always be prepared for the possibility that you're going to do an interview, and to do these things regularly, and to do it as soon as possible, because, even if you're announcing, it could happen, pretty quickly. So what are your thoughts on this, Sean?
This really goes to Alex's question. She goes, so what can candidates, basically how do candidates prepare? Well, one is that is to get ready for it now. So there are certain things you can do right now, and that's what we're going to get into next. You also want to get what we already said, is that almost all interviews are basically these 20-minute to prepare situations, one way or another. And this idea of already having done the prep, there is one exactly right there, Pat. For some of these, it's going to be 20 minutes for 20 seconds. And you want to make sure that you're delivering what you want to say and how you want to say it. And that's something that people just don't focus on too often. One situation that you and I were talking about before we got started was the campaign launch, right? Yep. This is not a surprise. It is you almost all, if you've done it where you're picking the date and you're going out there, this is not a surprise story. You're the one sending out the information. Yet
your campaign kickoff, your campaign announcement,
it's coming, and it is often a fire drill for candidates. I mean, we see that more times than not. I mean, wouldn't you say majority of the time?
I think it's almost like, oh, I forgot we might actually have to talk to people about this kickoff or this announcement. People are worried about the streamers and the bunting for the and the drinks and food for the event, but ultimately, they're going to talk to people. And as soon as you file the paperwork,
Yes.
there's occasionally across this country, there's an enterprising reporter. I know it's not very often. I know that you're not going to see this too often, but you might end up being that one person out of like 100 reporters in your area that, that ends up actually checking the reports and finds out as soon as you file the paperwork, and they're going to call at that moment to talk to you, or they hear it through the rumor mill, or they whatever it is, they figure out something that you might be running, and they basically short circuit your wonderful plan to do this big announcement, and the
Yep.
story's coming.
Yep. And so how does your launch story, like the big event you got planned or whatever, become the 20-minute drill? One is when you file the paperwork, what Dustin was just saying. The other thing is, right, you want to get a big crowd to this event, right? So you start putting the word out. That word gets to one reporter who decides, hey, I'm in the business of making news. And this is news now, not news on Saturday when you want to get the big crowd together. It's news on Wednesday. And so they call you on Wednesday and they go, hey, I just saw your campaign announcement invite. Let's sit down and talk about that. I'll be over there with a camera guy in a half hour. And you're like, well, what? What are you going to say? No, I'm not running until Saturday. I mean, so you get to, so you're going to get to decide on some of these things. So there are some things you can do to be ready for it.
It's incredibly frustrating for candidates, and we totally get that. But you ultimately are going to do it when they show up and they cover it. And it's possible that they do it on that Wednesday and you get no coverage on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's actually most likely going to happen that way.
Yeah. And so the press is not looking to work on your schedule is the first thing. So what do you do in that situation? Well, Dustin, we talk about regular communications prep. So this could be daily or multiple times a week, getting in there. So let's talk a little bit about what you do in these short, and to be clear, these are short sessions where you'd be doing this.
Yeah, so first just get on the calendar. One of the things, we had a great conversation, and the last episode was with Scott Young of Ultra Learning. This is actually an Ultra Learning project. Even if you are an old pro at communications, you need to approach it like it's an Ultra Learning project for your communications, for your campaign. If you were a congressman and you're going into your U.S. Senate race, you should approach it like it's an Ultra Learning project for your vision and message for your Senate race, because it is a whole new race with a whole new message. So you need to look at it as like, how am I going to discover what's the message that I'm going to be talking about? So you're going to need to do a pretty in-depth before you're actually talking about this, is beginning to clarify your vision. We've talked about the vision exercise. We had Alex on to go through her vision. So you can go check out the Inside the Vision conversation. But you want to start to get really familiar with that and start looking at all the issues that might be things that could undergird your vision. Really start to get what the message is. What's that choice that you are presenting to your voters? Your strengths overlapping with your opponent's weaknesses on that which makes a difference for the voters that they care about. We call it the Olson strategy sweet spot. So you want to be looking at that and being really clear on that and thinking how it affects most of the issues. So that's one of the earliest things to do, because that's going to all inform that first interview. So you want to be working through that. Now, the 15 minutes, 20 minutes each day of daily prep, it's really going to be being interviewed, just like we talked about with the Ultra Learning conversation. You want to do it, the drills and the practice, in the situations that are most like it. So you're going to have somebody pretending to be a reporter and asking tough questions, asking them as tough as possible. Maybe do some softballs as well. We'll tell a little bit about that in a while, how you practice for all the hard stuff and then you don't practice for the easy ones, and then you whiff the easy ones.
Yeah.
That can also happen. So dig your well before you're thirsty. Make sure you start that immediately, preparing for those interviews that you won't know when they're coming.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say is the communications prep book is creating and keeping a list of all the issues, all the questions the media are asking candidates, asking people in your race, asking people in your state, in your community, and what they're covering, what's really in the news, and have your team ask those regularly. We will end up with sometimes hundreds of questions that candidates would want to just be aware of, and think about how they can pivot to those answers. So these are the things that you're doing
Yeah.
ongoingly. And I've been informed that's not a word. I do think it's a word, and that's actually my word. I created it because I love to do things ongoingly. So you prepare on camera and watch the tape. That's really what you want to do when you're doing your preparing beforehand, is to actually prepare and then watch it. And that goes back to the ultra learning episode that we did, is that you are ultimately giving yourself a feedback loop. You watch it and you realize that you look ridiculous on camera. Well, then you probably have some things to work on, and you don't
Yeah.
have to do it live when you do
Well,
it.
exactly. And I'm going to go back to the communications prep book. I think this is really great. This idea of, if you don't want to be thrown off by a question, get used to having questions coming to you. I mean, that is one of the best ways to avoid that. And it doesn't mean have these questions and then memorize a bunch of answers. It really is, questions are going to be asked a lot of different ways. And then you're basically saying, okay, what is the topic that I'm talking about, and where do I want to get to?
Mm-hmm.
And that is the whole point of this. So that it really doesn't matter what question you get. You know, it was laughed about in 2008 when Sarah Palin was in the debate, and she was asked a question and she goes, I'm not going to answer that. I'm going to do this. And, she said it out loud. Most people go, when they're in that point and that's what they want to do, they go, oh, yeah, there's something out of there I plan to answer. Or maybe I won't answer any of it and I'll just talk about what I want to talk about. But she just said it. But that really diffused whatever she didn't want to answer in that question. I can't even remember what the question was.
Yeah, that was it may not work every single time, but that was a decent way to do it. She acknowledged the question and that she wasn't going to answer it, and she went on to the other thing. Most of the time, as long as you have to be aware that the premise could be, like the old question that people use to point this out, don't accept the premise of the question. If the question from the reporter is, do you still beat your wife?
Mhm.
Then there's really no way to answer that question. So you have to challenge the premise of it. But ultimately, answering the question quickly and then pivoting, or answering the question quickly and pivoting, and having that question actually be something that, like in improv, they talk about yes and. You address that and you bring it into your larger point. You use it as a tool to make the case for your overall strategic message. And we have a question here. Would it be a good idea to get your vision to within 30 seconds? Your vision's a big thing. Your vision is something you may not even talk about all the parts of your vision when you talk to voters. It is really what is possible when you're done with your service, when you've been in office and you've done all the things that you want to do. What's now possible for people, what's happened. This could be, is you actually build the vision. It might be something that takes 10 minutes for you to talk about it with your consultants. Now, from that greater vision, we want to come up with the specific message, that choice that we are presenting to voters that really brings that vision. It's informed by that vision, but what is it specifically that we are presenting as a choice between you and the other possible candidates or the other candidate? And it has to be on something that voters really do care about. So yes, you want to get that message, that choice that you are presenting to people down to 30 seconds or less, because that's ultimately what's going to hopefully get covered and be in your message. That 20 seconds, as Pat said, 20 minutes for 20 seconds.
Exactly right. And so, you want to get down to a boiled down, this is what it's all about. And here's the difference. And you're talking about something greater than that. So great question.
So prepare on camera and watch the tape. Those are that's the most important thing, is you actually watch it. You'll be able to see what works, what doesn't work. And having someone like us who's professional, who does these things, is very helpful. So is there anything else on the preparing? Because ultimately we're talking about the 20-minute crash course. That's
Yeah.
what we're going to move to.
Yep.
Because there's going to be times where you might have to, you haven't been able to do all this prep beforehand. So what do we want to talk about now?
Yeah. Well, I think let's talk about practicing looking good on camera. I mean, it is the thing. This is the thing. Like in the 20 minutes, like if literally you have 20 minutes and you haven't been able to do this, this is going to be the part that's going to be the most difficult to actually get practiced in that amount of time. So this is something you definitely want to have in the uh, going beyond prepare on camera and watching the tape. Like these are the things to look good on camera. So at least want to have them in the back of your mind and like, okay, these are some things to do, and you want to be
Because
practicing them all on.
Yeah, because if you try to like shove them in, shoehorn them in the day that you were doing it, we're going to have that as part of our 20-minute process, the checklist, the flight checklist, we call it. We will have some basic things, but you really don't want to be thinking like, oh, I have to do X, Y, and Z, and I have to do all these things all the time. That is going to be hard to manage during your interview. So the
For,
first thing is smiling and looking pleasant on camera. So this is something that people struggle with. It's something that people feel like one objection I've had with people before is, I'm talking about a serious topic and I really, or there's a tragedy that's happened and I don't want to look like I'm just this, goofball who's smiling a whole bunch. Well, you can tell right now I'm actually smiling as in generally what I'm doing with my face. But if I were to just have my normal face on camera, it looks like I'm dead
yeah,
when I do that. If you do that, it is not it's not going to look good. It's going to be uncomfortable for people. So just slightly have a positive, smile with your eyes a little bit, smile with your mouth, the corners of your mouth upturned a little bit.
mm-hmm.
And that's all you need to do. You don't have to look like the Joker. You don't have to have a crazy smile on your face. That's not necessary to do it. One thing that is helpful though, before you're going into the interview, we'll talk about this in a little bit, is to actually smile for 30 seconds to a minute before you're going to go into the interview, so that you are actually you're actually practiced at it. It also improves your mood and you're going to do better. Also, no blank looks like I just did a second ago.
Mm-hmm.
I do that every once in a while, and it's noticeably different than when I'm smiling. The other thing that is really, really important is that depending on the style of the interview, is to either look directly at the camera. So if you're doing a TV interview, like say you're on Tucker Carlson tonight, then you would want to look right at the camera when you're speaking. And you're not looking over here, you're not looking over here, you're not looking over here, you're looking directly at the camera. But if you're in an interview situation, and I do this when I'm talking with Sean, is I actually look as though I'm talking directly at Sean. But if you were if you're doing a stand-up interview out in public, there's a cameraman, and then there's the reporter with they have their microphone, and they're have it in front of your face. Well, you're going to face the person that you're talking to. Otherwise, it'll look weird to people.
Yeah.
They want to know that you're talking to a real person, that you're connecting with a real person. That's what they want to see, is that you're connecting with somebody. So those are a couple of the things. The other thing, if you, I don't know if we tease this in the description or not, but a way to lose 20 pounds immediately is to lean ever so slightly forward, lean 15 degrees forward. You don't want to be sitting back relaxed. You can tell, you can't even hear me probably as well sitting
Yeah.
back here. It doesn't look good. William F. Buckley used to do this. He used to be in a swivel chair and he would go like this. And I remember him on Hardball. He'd always look like this. And every once in a while he would lean back and he would like dip underneath the camera. Anyway, that doesn't look great on camera. What I do is I lean forward about 15 degrees like that. So like this. And you can tell that it brings the top of your head forward. You're kind of sitting up and you're leaning forward, and it gets rid of the double chins,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes you look a lot thinner. And it's a much better approach to presenting yourself on camera, is to have that slight lean about 15 degrees forward. And you really have to practice it because it's not a natural way to sit for most
Right.
people. Sitting up straight looks a little bit like this is me sitting up straight with really good posture, and that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
This is the way to do it. Sean, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that it also shows. Well, first, I grew the goatee to get rid of the double chin, but
Yeah, and the beard also helps, if that makes sense for
but
you. If you're a female candidate, I don't recommend
I would
wearing
advise.
the goatee or the full beard.
But in all seriousness, the leaning in also does something else. It really shows that you're interested. Um, if you're listening, if you're on the listening side, it also shows that when you lean in, it is more likely the reaction on the other end is that people lean in or they pay more attention. Like, oh, somebody's leaning in. The natural reaction is, I need to pay more attention. Like this must actually be important as opposed to all the things that I hear that aren't important. So there is that that brings that about. So
That's really good advice. The mirror neurons in your brain are going to have the other person match you in how you're presenting yourself, which is great. It'll have them be more attentive. The other thing is to address your verbal and bodily tics, the situation with that now during your preparation, your ongoing preparation. I recommend people do that. Avoid shifty eyes. One thing that people who are on TV, if you see someone who's not typically on TV, maybe it's an expert on some thing that nobody thinks about until all of a sudden it's the thing that everybody's talking about. Think of some of the epidemiologists that you saw a year ago who had never been on TV before, and then all of a sudden it's their moment in the sun, and they're on, and they're like this.
Yep.
For everybody on the podcast, this makes no sense whatsoever. I'm shifting my eyes back and forth, but they're not quite sure where to look, and they're looking like this, and you just don't look honest.
Yeah.
So it gives people kind of an uncomfortable sense when somebody's shifting their eyes around. And when you're in a situation where you're doing, especially a satellite interview, you might be in an empty room where there's like one other person who's there. You're probably in an uncomfortable situation. You've got a bunch of lights on you, and you're not quite sure where to look. And there's a monitor usually that's over somewhere that you might be able to look at the person. But if you were to sit like this, looking at them, it's not going to look right.
Yeah.
So that's something to work on, as well as any of the ums and uhs. And everybody's going to do that. That's understandable, but to work on it. By the way, something I do, I know that it's something that I do. I have this for my daily preparation, which is called Political Trade Secrets, is how we have created daily communications prep, is I have this sticky note by the camera where I look almost all the time, and it just says no ums and no uhs. You might have a verbal tic where you say things over and over again, or you have a verbal tic where you say or you say whatever. There's all sorts of different things. We all do it. It is understandable, and a little bit of it's going to be perfectly fine for folks. But while you're preparing, well before the 20 minutes, you can actually address that. If you try to address it in the 20 minutes, it's not going to go well.
No.
Because you're going to get in your head.
No. Exactly. That's exactly right. And your point about the shifty eyes is a good one because, just think of what you hear when you hear the word shifty.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think, oh, there's an honest guy or honest gal.
Yeah, you think of Tricky Dick Nixon and how he, his really big on the world stage. I mean, he was vice president, but when they had the presidential debate, he and Kennedy, he was sweaty, he was shiny, he just didn't look like he was credible or that he was honest, or he looked nervous. So that's the next thing is before you're actually in your 20 minutes, we're going to mention this in the 20-minute prep in our flight checklist. However, when you're actually doing your preparation, you want to get a sense for what kind of lighting is necessary. Some people require a lot more lighting than other people. So having a sense of that and knowing that is helpful before you do a TV interview, so that you can ask for that from whomever is doing it. And then also your makeup needs. Most of the time, most interviews that you do, they will not provide any kind of makeup. Any
Right.
debate that you do, they will probably not provide makeup. It is rare anymore that anybody provides makeup for these sorts of things. If you go on Fox News and you're actually doing it live, they will have the makeup chair, and they'll actually do that because it's part of their brand. They want to make sure people look the best they can. But now that people are doing home studios, it's not something that people do. So you want to know what that is. If you're a fella, you probably don't wear makeup too often. So you need to know that about, clear powder and things like that. I don't even know all the terms. I just know what's generally needed for a guy to make sure that they don't look shiny and not and look poor on camera. So that's my recommendation that people do. And then the final thing is what we're going to actually be talking about when we do the flight checklist, and we'll go into this in detail at that time, is practice creating the context. So there's people we've worked with, they've gotten so good at this, they can actually just think it to themselves as they're about to walk into a meeting or an interview, and they're really on point. So you want to practice it. We'll tell you how to do that here momentarily. And we have a question here.
Okay.
Would you advise specific colors for TV interviews? That's a really excellent question. This has changed over time because of how TVs have changed and how broadcasting technology has changed. But I definitely don't recommend a lot of patterns. I recommend solid colors as much as possible. When you're doing a daily live stream podcast, you may not have the wardrobe to always have the exact perfect things, but generally, a solid sport coat's going to be better. And it used to be, it depends on your coloration. I wouldn't recommend wearing a white shirt for most people. That was our recommendation before, but with HD cameras and everything else, it's a little bit better than it used to be, and with good lighting. But if you wear a white shirt, for most guys, it's going to wash out your complexion. You don't want to wear anything that strobes. If someone's using an older camera, there's a possibility wearing really tight patterns or something silky could have this flashy nature. So having an idea of what looks that way is why it's important to do camera work when you're actually doing your practice sessions. Have somebody have a camera. You can use an iPhone, real easy way to do it, and actually do it on camera. And then look at what does it look like if it strobes. And strobes just means that it kind of has this flashing nature. You can imagine it with ties. You've probably seen someone on TV with a tie that has really fine pattern, plus it's silky and it strobes on camera. Sean, any thoughts that you have about this? You are definitely a maven of fashion, so I would think that you're the person I'm going to go to when it comes to these sorts of things.
Smart move. One thing I try to do, at least for this show, is you want to be mindful, particularly of the sport coat with the strobing that you talked about. So it's an iteration we got to find out. So you say, hey, I only see the same 3 or 4 sport coats. Well, there's a reason for that. We got to determine that as we were going along. I also, for some folks, it's avoiding a color that can make, so like red for a lot of people can make your face look red.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's avoiding that. So you just want to know what some colors can do just to you personally. Like how do they occur once you're wearing it. And then, you've got green screens and stuff like that. You want to make sure you aren't wearing whatever colors will affect that if you're in front of green screens and whatnot. We're doing a little less of that now. So
yeah. One thing that for both guys and gals is generally horizontal stripes aren't great for folks on camera. It might makes you look a little bit wider, of course. So there's going to be just a lot of those things. You want to test that out. It'd be good while you're doing your prep sessions to have your 3, 4 outfits that genuinely work. This is something that happens so often is, we're having the first TV interview and nobody has thought about what looks good on camera, and you're going to just need to work through that. And it's nice to not have that be the breakdown that gets in the way of you being able to get to the interview and actually worry about the content of the interview, like what you're actually going to talk about. So, but here's the thing. They call you up, they want to do it. Maybe it's some crazy, publication like Vox, that they actually are now, Rupert, who's one of the reporters for Vox, it's now a verb or it's now a thing. A Rupert video is something like the Covington Kids, where they take out the context from beginning and end. A Rupert video is that's the fellow's name, Rupert. But a Rupert video is where they basically edit it deceptively such that it creates a hoax. The Fine People hoax is another example of a Rupert. The Covington Kids, as I mentioned, is a Rupert. There's so many Rupert videos. So if you are getting a call from Vox and a reporter named Rupert who has hoaxes are named after him now, that's what a hoax is a Rupert. What should you do? Should you do that interview? What do you think, Sean?
I'm going to say most likely not.
Yeah.
Envision a scenario where it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Just know that you're likely to get painted in the least favorable light for yourself.
Yeah.
And so, it really is the first question to answer with any of these, which is, how do you know if you should even do the interview? And they're really, we
call this the acid test. It's for the interview setup. Is this even something that we would want to do?
And Dustin, we've hinted at the 3 overall questions that need to be asked each time. Just want to make them clear right now. One is what we call the acid test, which is how do you know if you should even do the interview? And then how do you look on camera, which we've already talked about. So, but that's something that you're practicing along the way. You just want to make sure, like, okay, how do I look good on camera? And then third is creating the context, and then this is how to create the context for the interview yourself, and the audience. So you want to just really create all of that as you're getting ready to go in there. So, so you mentioned the first thing, which is the acid test. Should I even do the interview? Does this even make sense?
Yeah.
And there are a few things that you can do to parse through that pretty quickly. Because if the answer is no, this is a pretty quick interview prep session.
Yep. So why don't you walk us through the 3 principles to the acid test and whether or not you should even do this thing?
Great point. Principle 1 is you want to make sure that this is not the candidate doing this to determine the acid test. So, if possible, have someone, not the candidate, get the details for the interview. This allows more questions to be asked of the interviewer and for a determination to be made if the interview even makes sense. Look, if you're the candidate and, in plenty of races, that'll be the case. It'll be somebody say, hey, can you do an interview or hey, do you have 20 minutes for an interview? Or do you have time for an interview or whatever? And then if you're the candidate, it's either yes or no, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where if it's a press person or somebody that's designated to do it. So even if you're the candidate getting this, you want to make sure that you aren't necessarily taking the call immediately from the member of the press.
This is why it's so important early on to train reporters to call the communications director and to make it really clear that the candidate doesn't manage the schedule. So you need to talk to the communications director, the press secretary, whomever it is that's in charge of such things. And they're going to work with the scheduler to make sure that this works. And they're going to work out all the details because the candidate just is not going to have the time or ability to work out all the details.
Yep. So first you want to make sure it's not you. That is principle 1 of this. Principle 2 is you want to get the lay of the land. You need to ask all the relevant questions for the interview. And here are just a few. You want to figure out how long the interview is, but not how long they want the interview to be, but also you get to say how long, and then you say you do, or how long you don't want to go, and this is all something that gets created in that at the beginning. You want to find out what the topic is, and you want to be very clear on what the topic is. So sometimes they might just say, "Hey, I'm coming to do an interview on the race." Okay, that's wonderful. What in particular?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a
What are
lot.
what are topics of interest to you? What do you think your viewers want to see? Just to ask a few open-ended questions
Yeah,
for the staff person. Hopefully, is the
yeah.
one doing that.
And then where do they want to do this interview? So look, sometimes it'll be, we're in your neighborhood, so we can get this now, or we need you to come to the studio, or can you do it by Skype, or whatever you want to get, like however that is.
Hmm.
And so you want to, and right now we're talking about TV interviews. You want to do this for any interview, because we say that all TV interviews are on camera interviews in some way. Your mannerisms are going to show through,
All interviews, yeah, all interviews are basically like being on camera.
exactly. So you've heard it that, you've heard people on the radio before, and you go, I can hear their smile,
Hmm.
right? Well,
Yep.
that's not by accident.
They,
Nope.
they're definitely smiling in that moment.
Yeah, you can hear it. And so you want to be intentional about it. So that's why when we're talking about this, where do they want to do it? How do they want to do it? All those things, you want to make sure that you're in a spot where it makes sense. Like, for example, if it's a radio interview or an interview with a news reporter and you're driving for some reason, well,
That's, that's a terrible idea.
I mean, just think of all the bad things that can happen in that. Someone cut you off.
Hmm.
Odds are you going to, you know, still be pleasant with the newspaper reporter on the other end? So you want to just get straight about that.
Sometimes you'll have a driver and the candidate will be in the
Yeah,
passenger seat and they'll do that. That sometimes can work, though. Here's the thing: you might end up hitting a bad cell service. So
yeah,
if you have the time in the schedule and you can pull over in an area where you have good cell service, you're doing a radio interview or you're doing a print interview by phone in the car. Now, but you also want to think about, is this going to be a comfortable thing? If you're sitting back in most passenger seats, you're going to be sitting back. You're going to be sound relaxed. You're going to have lower energy. That's not something that you necessarily want to convey. So thinking about the situation, if it's a print interview over the phone, they're not going to see you. However, your voice and how it occurs to them is going to make them have certain thoughts and ideas about the questions they're going to ask. If you sound uncomfortable, they might think, I think I've got them. I think I've got them on this issue. I'm going to keep needling them on it. So you need to be ready for making sure you're comfortable no matter what kind of an interview it is, even if it's not in person. If it is if it is on camera, you want to think about your lighting. That's why we've talked about this. That's why you want to think about making sure you have the makeup, have all that stuff figured out. If I were to do an interview that was going to be done by Skype, for instance, I would do it where I'm sitting right now because I have everything already set up. I know the lighting. I know that I'm comfortable with it. I don't have to think about it. So I would definitely do it here. But if I was going to do it outside, I would want to make sure that I do it in a place where it doesn't look like I'm in like a prison yard or something.
yeah,
I want to make sure that it's done in a place where maybe there's a nice backdrop, but I also have to think about, will I be washed out? So you don't necessarily have to leave that up to the cameraman exclusively. You might have a few options, and then just make sure that you see how it looks in the camera before you go live if it's a stand-up interview that they're doing with you.
yeah, absolutely. And then principle 3 is the angle. You want to find out what the reporter's angle is. Look, and this can be difficult at times. Dustin, you and I have had these conversations where the reporters are being cagey,
Mhm.
uh, and it kind of gives you some clues on whether you want to do it or not if they
Yeah.
can't answer that for you. But
The best reporters, and even like not even great reporters, generally, despite, we have the view, we all have as Republicans this view of fake news. Most news is fake, regardless. I mean,
Mhm.
it can't help but be fake. It's one person's perspective. It's not reality. That being said, if you are a reporter, if you think about it, if you want to stand in a reporter's shoes, they want to have a career. But if they become known as somebody who is really dishonest and is not going to put you in at least an adequate light, or that they pull a fast one on you, they will not be able to get interviews. So they will not want to do that. They will not want to be known as somebody who can't be trusted by anybody they interview, because they'll never ever get an interview again, and that's
Yeah,
not great for the career. So most people are going to give you a sense of it. But I think
yeah,
you have some other thoughts as to what people can do.
absolutely. Look, so you can also do a little research on the reporter. So this is one thing if you're doing the prep ahead of time. Okay, well, how do they generally go about stories? Like, what is, because they tend to have the same angle for for a lot of different things. So that is one thing you can do. Um, but knowing where the interviewer is coming from determines a lot of things. It determines, a, does this make sense? Um, it gives you the opportunity to reframe the issue or story. I mean,
Hmm.
this, I think, one of the most important things is if they go, oh yeah, hey, I want to do an interview on this, and uh, and I see it as X, Y, and Z, and you go, whoa, 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 you know,
You
you,
can actually, if you're the communications director, you can give them some new information that might add context that's going to make it more favorable ground for the candidate as the candidate comes on. That's really important. You might give them some new facts, some new information that's going to have them view it a little bit differently. And so it's a lot of times they will have talked to a few other people who might be your opponents beforehand, and that's the prism, the frame that they're coming at it with.
yeah, and this also gives you guidance for the rest of the preparation. So you really finding this out kind of gives you what's going on, and really builds on that lay of the land. And so far what we've been talking about is, uh, and we're going to get into, now that you've decided that this is the thing you want to do, that you're saying yes to the first question, which is I want to do the interview. Then we're going to get into the context here in just a moment, and that is really where working with us at Olson Strategies makes the difference. We really are focused on having you deliver interviews, having you deliver communications really with anyone in a way that's in a favorable light to you. So we want to set you up powerfully for that. So if that's something you say, hey, you know what, I'd like all of my communications to be powerful communications, be it fundraising calls, interviews, whatever else might be going on out there, reach out to us. It's olsonstrategies.com, OLSON strategies.com. You can email Dustin it's Dustin at olsonstrategies.com, or you can email me, Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com. We'd love to set up that conversation with you today.
Excellent. And I do appreciate people who've been reaching out to have conversations about running for office and all of these things. We really can provide you a top notch campaign. I would say we are one of the best in the country for this, and highly recommend people do reach out to us. And as we, probably need a drum roll. This is the 20-minute prep that we're about to go into. We've been working up to it. And here's the thing, just one last thought on the last item. Should you or should you not do it? The acid test. Don't be afraid to not do it.
Exactly.
If there's something going on that does not make sense, maybe you just had a big fight with your kids or something. I don't know. It just may not make sense for you to do it. And instead of putting you out there where you could become a real problem, it could be a real problem for you, then just don't put yourself in that situation. So I know that it sometimes feels like you have to do something, but you don't necessarily have to do it. I want to mention this question from Pat. This is a perfect time to answer this question. In light of the 60 Minutes piece, should everyone have a person there? And I think that that's really important, not only to have a person there, but also to record the interview. And you probably need to let the reporter know that you're recording it. But if it's a phone interview, that's a little bit more difficult. But you can have it on speakerphone and have your staff person or someone else have their cell phone record it just with the recorder that you have. But it's important to make sure that you record it. One other reason to record it is that you then can go back and watch it or listen to it. That's going to be a great part of your prep. One of the best ways we ever do debate prep is that we film it, and then we go through the answers, or we do a debate. If we have multiple debates in the campaign, we watch it just like we used to do in football. We'd watch tape on Mondays after the game, and you really don't have to tell people what didn't work. You can just ask what worked, what didn't work, or what was missing, the presence of which would make a difference, and they're able to usually pick it out. So that's a really great question, Pat, and thank you for asking that. It's good. You need to have a person there. We always make sure that if we have one of these 20-minute situations, that there's at least one other pair of ears there, and that they record it with their cell phone, get the video, make sure you actually have audio that works. Because if they do deceptively edit, if they do a Rupert and they create something that isn't what actually happened, which is so easy to do with video, then that's going to be a problem. So the flight checklist, keys to successful interview prep in a time crunch. So you've decided to do it. What are you going to do in the next 20 minutes if they're on their way with the cameraman? The first thing is get present to your vision. Remember what the heck you are all about anyway. So Sean, what would be your thoughts about this?
Well, it really doesn't matter what the interview is about. You want to know why you're doing this, like why the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so you want to get present to that first and just have it be there for you, because this interview might be about something unpleasant. And it's very easy to say, well, why do I want to do this? Or why do I want to talk about something controversial? Or, my neighbor down the street might not like me anymore because I'm going to say where I stand on the issue or whatever. Well, if what you're really all about is creating really making a difference for your community or your state or the country, well, then guess what? This interview is, in that moment, it is the thing that can make the biggest impact on that. So even if it is about something completely different, this is the driving force of your campaign, so you ought to be using it.
It is the thing right now that you're doing to further your vision. So I recommend people go back to the inside your vision, inside the vision conversation. You can do this very quickly. It's just like at the end of my service, this is what is going to be possible for the people in my district, my state, my country, now X, Y, and Z. Whatever it is, just quickly create that so that you're present to what it is that actually matters. And, this is important. We had this conversation with Scott Young, the Ultra Learning book. In principle, I think it's 6, but it's the feedback principle. When we talked about this, there's, a component of it's the coaching, but ultimately what he was saying is that the feedback is that you're really testing and judging whether or not the big purpose of whatever you're doing is being met. And if it's not, then you have to course correct. And this is why we do the vision. We get present to our vision. We think about why is it we're doing this anyway? Why does it matter that I get elected? Why does it matter that I serve? It's going to be because X, Y, Z. These are the things that are going to happen because I did that. So to check out the inside the vision conversation, that's going to be a great way to do that. It doesn't have to take more than 2 minutes to do this process. Just remind yourself, why the heck are you doing this anyway? So next, we want to do the on the camera refresher. So we're not trying to fix everything. We're not trying to all of a sudden get rid of all of our ums and our uhs. We're not trying to do anything that's going to get us in our head at this point. Yep. We're just going to do a quick checklist. If you're not on camera, pretend you're on camera. Make sure you're not shiny. That's about the simplest thing about makeup and everything else and lighting. Just make sure you're not shiny and not extremely shiny. If there will be a little bit of shine. And do what you can about it. If you can't do much about it and you still want to do this interview, well, then don't worry about it.
Yep.
Take a few deep breaths. That's don't worry about it. You can get really uptight about it, but just take a few deep breaths. Remember to lean forward, as we've talked about, and ultimately smile at least slightly at all times, even if you're talking about a tough subject, even if it's a tragedy that's happened, have at least, this sense of you're smiling, because over there with other people, it's not going to look like you're, this big fake smile.
Uh,
It just looks like you're pleasant.
a slight smile when you're under attack is one of the more disarming things that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, if it's truly an attack, and that's the, like if there's, particularly in a debate setting,
Yeah.
if you're just smiling and, not, just taking it and then responding, in a measured manner, and really being able to lean forward and into it. If the other person has to keep continuing it, they just to look unhinged, because you're just there, you're taking it. It's not, you're getting it, you're dismissing it, and you're moving on.
So think of Michael Dukakis. He was asked the terrible question in the 1988 debate about Kitty Dukakis, and about how if she had been raped and murdered, what would he do? Would he still be against the death penalty? And so he handled that in a way that people were like, well, he doesn't care about his wife. Now, that's not true, of course, but he handled it in such a measured way that it was a problem. So he could have easily had a slight smile on his face and been pleasant and measured, but been like, that is a horrible question. I don't know why you would ask that question. Of course, anybody who would have that situation would be beyond angry. So I don't know why you would want to. Now, I've kept through this whole thing, I've kept at least a little bit of the sense of I'm smiling or pleasant, but I'm righteously indignant about it. So he could have done that at the same time. I don't know if I did a great job of that. I have to go back and look at the tape to see if it worked. But just generally, you can do that. So the next thing is create the context. This is really the magic of what we do. It's something that's completely different. So there's 4 parts to this. First, clean the canvas. You want to have a clean canvas. Then you want to create the filter you want for the audience and for the interviewer. And then you want to create the intention for what the interview is going to do. And then you want to actually create who you're being in the moment. This is going to be the most powerful thing you do. And this is what's going to take up most of the 20 minutes. It'll probably be about 10 to 15 of the minutes. You can also do this in under 5 minutes if you need to. I've done it under 2 minutes to jump onto something. So let's do this. So Sean, let's talk about a clean canvas and like how to make sure that everything is is brought to the front and is acknowledged, and we can do something about it.
You want to clear out any preconceived notions you have about the interview or the interviewer or the audience, whatever it is. And, when we talk about this, when thinking about preconceived notions, we say it's whatever's there for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be quote good or quote bad, whatever it is. You want to
be quote true, and it can be quote not true. It doesn't really matter if it's true or not.
But the truth is, if it's there and you don't acknowledge it, it's still going to be there, and then
it's going to run the show.
And when you get to discover it afterwards, when you go, whoa, what was that all about? And so that's not where you want to discover that. You want to get it beforehand, and so that is why cleaning the slate really is what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And just really having nothing about it. You get to have that when you say, you know what, this person who's coming to interview me, I don't like them.
Yeah.
They did me dirty 5 years ago, and I still haven't gotten over it. Whatever it is, right? Okay.
Just by acknowledging it, you all of a sudden have power over it, as opposed to having it in the background and having it be the unknown filter that's running the show.
Yeah.
If it's unknown or it's not acknowledged, then it's going to be the thing that determines what you say and how you act and everything else.
Yeah, and you're like, well, what is that exactly? Most likely it's the thing that you don't want to say, that you think of that you don't want to say, is the thing that you need to say in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, whatever it is.
So a lot of candidates consider themselves to be strong. They're leaders. They're I can't show any weakness. And in the background, they have this idea that they have to be perfect, or they
Yeah.
have to do really good, or it's all riding on this one thing. Well, for that person, what they need to say is, I have this idea that it's all riding on this. I've got to be perfect. I have to do it right, all that stuff. They have to just acknowledge that that's in the background for them. Because if they don't, we've seen this happen many times where someone becomes inauthentic because they all of a sudden think they have to sound smart, and they have to be, that's something else. I have to sound smart, or I don't know enough about this topic, or etc. These are a lot of things that can be in the back of your mind. You just want to get them all out.
Whatever it is, like
Mm-hmm.
it's got to be perfect. It's got to be great. It's got to be whatever. It has to be. That's another thing. If you hear "have to"
Mm-hmm.
running through there, you definitely want to say, "Hey, this is something to get out." But you just want to get that all out and say, "Okay, that's what's there for me," and say the thing to do, and what we get to do a lot is set it aside and say, you know what, I'm handing me either handing this over to somebody
Mm-hmm.
else, or I'm just getting that's there for me, and I need to, and I'm giving it up. Like,
Yeah, and if you're the staffer, you can easily say, "Can you hand all that stuff over to me? I'll worry about it for the next 20 minutes, the
yeah.
next hour while you're doing the interview. I'll give it right back to you afterwards. You can worry about it then, but I'll take it for now."
And
It's really, it seems silly, but it's as simple as you hand it over, or you give it up, or you just set it aside.
for candidates, you're already handing over either your portfolio or your whatever you're carrying with you. It might be your purse. If you're a female candidate, you might be handing that over to them. Well, hey, while
Especially
you're
hand over your cell phone, hand it
yeah,
all over at the same time.
yeah, while you're doing that, why not hand over all this stuff that you really don't want to take with you to the interview?
Yeah, I'm handing over all my concerns, worries, and need tos.
Yeah.
You can have all that for the next little bit.
So now you have nothing,
Hmm.
Dustin. That's
Yeah.
so now what?
Well, now you want to start creating a masterpiece on that clean canvas. You want to
Exactly.
start creating that, and really what that is you want to create the filter that you want. You want to speculate on 1 to 2 sentences to create the filter you want for both the interviewer, the audience, and then this is how you're going to relate to them going forward. So you're going to create a filter for the interviewer, a positive filter or an empowering filter, or a way that you can relate to them that uh, makes a difference for your campaign, that actually fulfills on your vision. For instance, I recently had this idea. So Facebook, hey Facebook, we're on you right now live. Um, Facebook disappeared our videos in January for a period, and all these different things. And we're going to have Michael Rechtenwald next week talking about the Google archipelago and the digital gulags and all these different things. So there's definitely a context out there that we all have about big tech, and Facebook in particular. Facebook has prevented us from doing advertising for quite some time. So I decided, despite the fact I have so many facts and arguments for why they're so terrible, I decided to set that aside and to actually create a new filter for them as a possible partner. That we're going to view Facebook as a partner, and we're going to effectively use their platform. So it's crazy. As soon as I set aside, my view of Facebook, and I viewed them as a partner, even though it felt contrived at the time, all of a sudden they came back to me and said that they had accidentally denied and disabled our ad account with them. We've been fighting with them for a couple of years, and they said it was their oopsies and what have you. I don't know. I don't think it's magic or anything like that. It's just I was willing to go to them one more time and to appeal our case and to get reinstated as an advertiser through Facebook. And so that's been really helpful for us.
Yeah.
So it was as simple as I was viewing them, the new filter I had for them, as a possible partner. It was that simple, is how I viewed them. Then there's the audience. So you have the interviewer and how you view it. I have a feeling this Facebook filter is not too different than what most Republicans have as a filter for most of the media, that
Yeah.
they're fake news, they're liars, they're sons of bitches, whatever you want to call it. We don't like the media, and they're very dishonest. So that's a pretty common thing for you as a Republican to probably think. So you want to set that aside in the last portion. And Sean, what would you say would be some of the possible ways you could view a new way you could view the interviewer?
Yeah, so the interviewer is could be a connection to your audience, to the viewers. It could be the uh, could be someone that is looking to well report the news,
Mhm.
um, and someone that's open to hearing what you have to say. I mean, those
Yeah.
are all possible ways they can be for sure. And
You
then
can
some.
look at them as a political leader because ultimately they are making a difference by informing citizens. You can also look at them as an important part of our democratic republic. They're playing an important part in our republic. You can even have it be even less about them and that they're simply a conduit. They are a conduit to my audience. They are a vessel for me to get my message to the audience. You can view them as a defender of the First Amendment as
Yep.
a possible way to view them. Even if you have all the reasons in the world to think that they don't do that anymore, you could relate to them. Decide that you're going to relate to them as a defender of the First Amendment, because when you do that, all of a sudden the way you speak and how you act to them is going to be a lot different than thinking that they're just some jerk reporter. And so that's as simple as like, okay, so I am, so the interviewer really is a defender of the First Amendment.
Hmm.
Now, what are some possible ways you could relate to the audience? It depends on where you are, what your message is, who the people in your district are. But Sean, just speculate on a few ways you could view the audience.
Yeah. Look, they can be caring. They care about their families. They care about their community. Particularly the people you're going to be talking to. You're really talking to voters.
Hmm.
So you want to make sure that you are, when you're talking to them, that you really look. They're people who are willing to give up their time to listen to your interview,
Hmm.
and they're willing to give up their time again to go vote. So it could be giving, it um, uh, could be selfless. I mean, there are a lot of different ways that you can look at this, like just what you know about them, just in how I described it.
Yeah,
The patriots. I mean, they could be
Patriots.
people
That's good.
that are out to make a difference. I mean, when they vote, could be conscientious. Could be any of those things that you go, hey, yeah, these are people that are, they clearly want to get more informed.
Hmm.
That's why they're listening to you. So,
Well, based on what you just said, you could boil that down to they are patriots who care about their families.
yep,
You could easily have, so you could go into this interview, the 1 to 2 sentences, the filter that you're creating, the empowered filter. You've set aside all the disempowering filters, but the new empowered filter is that I'm speaking to a defender of the First Amendment in order to reach my audience who are patriots who care about their families. So you're
yep,
talking to a defender of the First Amendment and patriots who care about their families. That's it. That's it. You can write it down on a piece of paper. This is who you're relating to. This is how you're going to relate to them going forward. It's all going to start going through this filter. So next, you're going to create your intention. And now that creating your intentions, really, you're creating the experience that you want to have your audience left with.
yep.
This is one of the most important things is that you leave them with a certain experience. So Sean, if you were going into an interview and I said, what's the experience that you want to leave your audience with? What would be a
Well, and I'm
possible
talking, yeah, and I'm talking to patriots who care about their families.
answer?
So, I want them left appreciated. I want them left uh, uh, interested,
Yeah.
and I want them left. I'm going to say uh, excited.
All right. So you're talking to a defender of the First Amendment and reaching your audience who are patriots who care deeply about their families. And you're leaving them appreciated, interested, and excited.
Hmm.
So it's as simple as that. So you write those 3 things down. Don't do more than 3.
Yep.
You could even leave it at 1, but 1, 2, or 3 ways that you have left them. And then I would say the other intention is the headline. If they remember one thing, these patriots who care about their families, what will it be? If you could write the headline for your own article, what would the headline be? So
Yeah.
let's say you're running for Congress in, let's say, uh, Georgia. We'll just pick Georgia. They're in the news.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Sean Bartley running for Congress, cares about Georgians and their families. And really, just that appreciativeness is really shown through. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It could be candidate stands on platform for families.
yeah.
That's putting in kind of headline speak. Yeah, it's this is the thing is that they're left with this idea. Now they're not necessarily going to write that headline, but I will tell you that when people are intentional about this and they create their intention, they create the experience they want to leave their people with, and they create the headline. Sometimes it is remarkable how close it gets to it. Now, so you're talking to these, this defender of the First Amendment. That's your interviewer. Your audience are patriots who care about their families, and you've left them appreciated. You've left them interested. You've left them excited, and you've left them with, the one thing that they know about you is that you are the candidate who is standing for their family. That's what they're left with. That you're the one who has their back. Now, the last thing, and it's the one thing, it is the thing that you can forget everything else up to this point. None of this matters once you create this next portion of the checklist.
Yep.
And that is the one thing: who are you being? And if you can do this one thing, if you can remember this one thing, that's all you have to do, because it's all going to flow through this for the interview. And it's the simplest thing to remember is if you can just remember one thing.
Yeah, I've said it before that if you're being who you create, if you say, "Yeah, I'm being X, Y, and Z," you could stand up there and read the phone book,
Mm-hmm.
and people would walk away going, "Wow, that person was X."
Yeah, he was confident. He was excited. He was what have you. So um, this is, some people might be a little bit confused when we say way of being. This is something that some people aren't as familiar with. So what do we mean when we say who are you being? There are infinite ways that you could be, and you are multiple ways every single day. Like your ways of being that you could have are infinite, and on any given day, you are being multiple ways of being. For instance, you might be angry, you might be happy, you might be sad, you might be a leader, you might be a follower, you might be, a badass. Who knows? You might be all sorts of different things during one single day. Now, the worst advice in the world is to be yourself, because that basically is handing over the steering wheel to whatever whim you have at any moment, because I'm guessing we all have ways of being that don't work great for us in our lives as who we are ourselves. And we don't have, we oftentimes have things that could derail us. And for instance, one that we've talked about before is being relaxed. You might come across as being low energy in that moment. So, there's different ways of being that might make sense for this interview. So if we have set aside all the background conversations, all the background things that could get in the way, and we are relating to our audience as, people, as patriots who care about their families, and we leave them appreciated, we leave them interested and excited, and with this idea that you are the one who's standing for their families.
Yep.
So if you leave them that way, who could you possibly be being that would leave them that way?
Yeah, I would say confident,
Mm-hmm.
appreciative, and there's one other one I was thinking about. Connected or engaged.
Engaged. There you go. Well, I really got engaged in that. So you're being engaged, you're being appreciative, and then whatever the third one was.
Yeah,
Is,
confident.
confident. There we go. And being confident. So you write those three things down. And if there's one way of being that if you were that way of being, it would make the difference. No matter what happens during the rest of this interview, that you are being one of those ways of being: appreciative, confident, and engaged. Which one would you want to make sure that you're being?
I'd go with engaged.
Engaged. All right. So being engaged, that's the no matter what, that's the one thing. You can be engaged, but be appreciative um, and be whatever the other one was. You write them down. I recommend writing them down. But the main thing, this is you can actually just see it right now. It's hard to remember a lot of things. So if you remember just being engaged, that's going to be now the filter that everything is run through.
Yep.
And all of it you've talked through in this point of time is now going to be run through being engaged, and that's going to be your game plan for this interview is being engaged.
Well, we've seen it numerous times, but I do remember in particular there was a candidate under attack, was getting ready to do response commercial,
Live video,
live video commercial, and went through this exercise, and she said the audience left. Her way of being was going to be happy warrior. She was going to be the happy warrior about it, and people watched it and said, I mean, people came back and said, "That's a happy warrior. That's what we need." And it made a huge difference. So
it's amazing. It seems like it's magic, but whatever you create. So you don't have. This is basically the choice that makes 1,000 choices. You create being engaged, or you create being confident. People will come back. I really like that candidate. He or she really comes across as confident, or being caring might be something. I really like that candidate. They really come across as caring. So these are whatever you write down, whatever you do, and if you actually be that, it's going to come across to people, and they're likely going to either say that word, or they're going to say synonyms of that word to describe how you come across. It's uncanny, but it really does work that way. And I highly recommend people be intentional about this, as opposed to just be yourself and whatever comes out, which could be being boring. It could be being anything, being terrible. Brian DeRoy, who we've had on before, he has too. I don't necessarily say that you should just do a strict ones that these are what you do all the time. But two things he tells people is be likable and be credible. And oftentimes that really does make the difference. Being likable really does make a difference for a lot of folks. Being credible makes a difference. So it keeps it really simple. Be likable, be credible. So whatever it is for you, you're doing it. And don't do this just to fix something that you think you're not this certain way. But what would really have people left being appreciated, being excited, being interested, what would actually leave them that way? So being engaged, that would make sense in that case. So any last thoughts on this as we begin to wrap the flight checklist?
Yeah, the main thing here is that regardless of all the circumstances that are going on around it, you get to determine how the audience views you. That's not left up to the interviewer, and that's not just in their heads, and you're not an innocent bystander in this whole thing. Mm-hmm. You get to determine it, and sometimes we don't like that. By the way, I would much rather it be your fault if you don't like it.
Exactly. Give up responsibility. You get to create the context, and we say that context is decisive, and that your actions and other people's actions are all going to be impacted by whatever the context is. So if you actually create the context of the situation and the message, the frame, that's another way to talk about this. You are creating the frame for the engagement, that you are the one who's in the terms of Sun Tzu, you're the one who's determining the battlefield. You're the one and he who determines the battlefield usually determines the victor. So that's ultimately what you're doing here by creating the context.
Yep. Absolutely. So you really want to do that. And there are a lot of great points here. So if you're thinking about this, you really want to just be able to answer those 3 questions as you're looking, if you even want to do this at all. It's how do you know if you should even do the interview, how to look good on camera, and then how to create the context for the interview yourself and your audience. You want to make sure you do those. And if you want to be able to set the tone out there with a wide swath of people with one-on-one human-to-human interaction, it's grass fire, folks. Canvassing, petitioning, live calling, on the doorstep, in front of the grocery store, or over the phone. Nobody does it better than Grassfire. It's www.grassfire.us. Schedule your complimentary consultation. People are looking, particularly right now, at petitioning either to get on the ballot for some races that are going on around the country, or getting their issue on the ballot right now. Critical time. You want to make sure that you're doing it well. You want to make sure you're doing it with integrity and legally. Cannot imagine going through this and then having it derailed because in an effort to save a few bucks, what ended up happening was you had illegal operations happening under your name. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It's amazing to me. We see so many people every single election cycle. This is one of the big stories of an election. Someone misses the ballot by 100 signatures or 30 signatures, and they have, maybe they don't get on because they have illegal fraudulent signatures. You name it. There's all these different things that happen, and then what has to happen is then you pay. So you saved a little bit of money, and then you have to go and pay the lawyers 2 times, 3 times, 10 times the amount of money that you saved in order to get on the ballot. And you have to go to court. All this ridiculousness. It is truly being penny wise and pound foolish.
Yep. And I would just avoid that if it were me. I would just get on the ballot the right way. That's why I'd call Grassfire. And again, that's www.grassfire.us. And want to remind people, tomorrow we've got Professor Veroli from Princeton on to talk about Machiavelli. And it's to my knowledge, I don't know that anybody out there is really going to be talking about it from this angle. When you hear about Machiavelli, you don't get to hear, hey, some of the things that his points of view that would make a difference in politics to the positive.
Yeah, and today, and really have it be applicable to today. He really has looked at it differently than most of the folks that I've read. But this is one of the things they say about Machiavelli, even back in his day. Apparently, Elizabeth I, Queen Elizabeth, kept a copy of Machiavelli's The Prince under lock and key in her bedroom chamber because she wanted no one to know that she read Machiavelli. And of course, she was, considered one of the great monarchs of the British Isles. But she kept it under lock and key, so no one would know. So it's Machiavelli's The Prince is known as the most disdained book and the most privately read. So, so join us tomorrow. Professor Veroli is definitely taking it out of the shadows and taking it into a positive light as to what you as a citizen can learn from it in order to choose leaders who can make a difference in our republic. And that is what he really makes the argument that Machiavelli is a Republican, not a big R Republican, but a small R Republican of a democratic republic. He's somebody who really believes in those principles and has advice for a modern audience as to how to choose your leaders and how to be a leader that can actually make a difference. So I'm looking forward to that. I have definitely learned a lot going back and looking at Machiavelli myself, and hope to provide all those insights for our great candidates that we work with. And then again, we're going to have Michael Rechtenwald on Tuesday talking about the Google archipelago and really all these big tech conversations, algorithms, AI, how that's affecting politics, how big corporations have become so woke and how it's, so destructive. So we're going to be able to ask him all sorts of questions. I recommend people check these books out, and then also, come prepared with your questions. You get to actually ask the author your questions, and that is a really cool thing to do. And I know that, Scott Young really appreciated all the questions from the audience. And he encouraged people to follow up with him afterwards because it really does make a difference for the content for any writer. We find this to be the case, that your input throughout the show really does make a difference. And it looks like we had throughout the show, the last I saw was 88 shares. So thank you very much to everybody who shared the program and for being a part of the So join Share Force, make a difference, reignite American patriotism. It's as simple as finding that button down there and sharing it, retweeting it, whatever your platform does to get it to more people. Who knows what conservative, what American citizen that you inspire to be a powerful political leader for their community, for their state, and for our country. So just take a second to like and to love and to wow whatever it is that you get to do on your platform. Do that, share the program, and it really does make a difference because you might inspire someone to step up, to speak up, and to show up as a political leader in our country. So thank you to everybody who did that throughout the program. Please keep sharing it. It does make a difference with us. So we really do appreciate that. And Sean, any last things you'd like to make sure that people know about today?
Yeah, well, I want to thank everybody for watching. You can go to politicaltradesecrets.com. That's where you get the insider stuff. It's right there. Sign up. You can get the newsletter. One went out, or one today. So there, you are in the know. That's the way to be in the know is sign up.
If you want to get the weekly insider, it's going to be going out within an hour or so of the program today. So you can go and you can sign up and you'll be on the list.
Yeah, so that's one of the best ways to stay connected with us. You can also join us on community, and that in our text community, it's 202-918-3345. Really get the freshest political trade secrets. We'll share insights from the show, some things that we run across that we find interesting from time to time. On that end, it's also the way to communicate with us. So you text back, you share back what things you're seeing out there, questions you might have, topics you'd like to see and hear on future shows. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you for all your insights today. Great political trade secrets were shared today. I think we really did open the kimono on this one. This is, if you watch this episode, you're going to be head and shoulders above everybody else out there.
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, this is real stuff. This is stuff that we use ourselves. So, we wanted to provide this for you, and watch it while you can, because we might put this behind a paywall at some point.
Exactly.
This is such good stuff. So, thank you very much, everybody.
If this was college, it'd be a 400 or 500 level course.
Yes, and you'd be paying a couple $1,000s for the credit. So just know that this is where it's at. Well, thank you very much. I can't wait to have Professor Veroli on tomorrow to talk about Machiavelli. People really want to see this episode, and I'm looking forward to it myself. And I can't wait to be back here tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time with you, Sean, as we share more great political trade secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.